Hello guys, hope you're all doing well. I'm back from Gamescom and today we're going to be talking about the Battlefield 5 build that I played at Gamescom. Now unfortunately I'm not allowed to show you any footage of it yet, there's an embargo and I've got to respect that, but I can talk about everything that I played. So in this video we're going to be going over the new Rotterdam map, the new guns, customization, general gameplay, gunplay, movement, new features, vehicles, fortifications, some of the RTX stuff that I saw because I did actually play Battlefield 5 with the new ray tracing technology enabled, and just some general thoughts about how the game is shaping up. But as soon as I can show you the footage I recorded, I will, but I'll be talking about it and there'll be a load of new details in here. So let's get stuck in then. So I got to play BF5 on the Rotterdam map for around 6 hours at Gamescom this week. The build of the game that I played is not the same as the beta build. The beta build will have some more stuff in it. I don't know exactly what that is, but I know that the gun customization in terms of the modifications should be in there. In the build that I played, there were visual customizations, and I'm happy to say that I think they've done it pretty good and it's a lot more robust and detailed than I was expecting. So remember that in BF5, visual customization doesn't affect gameplay apart from the sight that you're using. Everything else is just cosmetic, and the weapon modifications, which is like that skill tree thing that they showed in the company trailer, that affects how your weapon handles. So in terms of visual customizations, you click on the gun that you want, you can change the sights, and some of those options were iron sights, aperture sights, medium scopes, long range scopes, reflex scopes and anti-air sights. There were a couple more options and you can't pick everything on every gun, but on the assault class for example you can pick an M1A1 carbine and have a medium scope on it, so you can kind of be a DMR player with a assault class. And the rest of the visual customization included changing the muzzle, the barrel, the magazine, the receiver and the stock. Now what was really neat about this is that it wasn't just a skin change, it was actually changing the shape and look of the gun. So a different stock on the drilling, which is the double barrel shotgun thing with the rifle, might have an extra pouch on it, or it might have some extra ridges on it, or if you pick a certain barrel it might add cloth to the front of the gun. So you could make some really interesting looking weapon combinations. One of my favourite ones were the night ops, which were kind of matte black, and then you could mix that up with factory new so it was nice and shiny, or add some leaves on there, some woodland material. The visual customization really surprised me and it was a lot better than I was expecting. And in total there were 7 or 8 different skin options. The weapons in the build I played were quite interesting too. Assault had the STG, which we've seen in the alpha, the M1A1 carbine, the Turner's SMLE, again you could put a medium scope on that if you wanted to, and the Gewehr 43. So that used to be on the medic class, and unless they're also including it in the medic class, that means that Assault now gets the SLR DMR style weapons. And the medic weapons had the MP40, the EMP, the Suomi and the Sten. Again, no SLRs there, so looks like at the moment they're only going to get SMGs. The support weapons were the SIG KE7, the FG42, the Bren, seen that in the alpha, and the M30 drilling, which is the double barrel shotgun thing with a rifle, which we already talked about. And the Scout got the Lee Enfield Mark IV, the Kar 98 and something called the ZH29, which was just way overpowered in this build of the game. I don't know if they changed it for the beta, but it was a 2-shot kill. It was like the RSC 2.0 on steroids. It was way too good, so if that's in the beta I'm hoping that they've adjusted the damage values on it. In terms of my favourites out of the new weapons, the M1 was very good with a medium scope on it on the assault class. The Sten felt amazing on the medic. The support guns, the FG42 was incredible to use, very fun running around with that thing. It looks good and it kills very quick. And of course the support class had the M30 drilling. It's a double barrel shotgun, but if you select the alternate fire mode you get a rifle shot, and that's a one-hit kill headshot, and you could just dome people at range with that. Very fun using that weapon, and it really gives the support class a aggressive offensive option. The Scout class, I played that the least, but the Kar 98, that was really fun to use with the iron sights, and also the ZH29. As I said, way too overpowered, so I'm hoping that that's changed in the beta. As for the sights, well, the reflex sight that you've maybe seen in a couple of the trailers they released was pretty good. It's kind of like a hollow sight, but it was way too dirty. Like, you couldn't really see much through it. So hopefully they improve that for the beta. In terms of the gunplay, still really enjoying it, and it felt like the time to kill went back to Alpha 1, which was very quick. You feel very lethal in this build of the game. I really like where the time to kill is at the moment, and I feel like it's just enough to react if you're being shot in the back. Suppression still remained as a visual effect too. They've simplified the UI too and moved everything towards the bottom left in the minimap, so now there's much less stuff in the center of the screen getting in the way, which is what I like. There's a compass above the minimap, and you can also see the health of your squad mates in the bottom left around their icons. There's a new, more simplified combo rows too, where you select a section and then that opens up more options. It's much better in my opinion. That V is still there when you get an award, but I think you'll be able to disable that as an option. I think it's a bit too obtrusive right now, and it felt like they fixed the spotting bug now too, so very rare to see a spotted enemy. Although suppressed enemies did get this weird square thing that kind of zoomed onto them for a little bit. And the spotting flare was still in the game. It feels like they've reduced the radius of it, but as far as I could tell, it gives you a real-time red marker on the minimap, so I don't know if that has a place in this game. We'll see what they do with that. Now, what about some of the biggest gameplay changes? Well, medic revives and squad revives are now much quicker. Good, you don't get that stupid delay anymore after you revive someone where you can't move. That's gone, I like it. There's now a bleed out option too when you're on the ground, so you can get to the squad deploy overview or deploy overview quicker, although I think that the actual spawn time is still the same even if you skip the revive. If you're a medic, you permanently have the syringe as well. You don't have to pick it as a gadget, so that means there won't be medics running around without the revive syringe anymore, which is good in a certain respect because it gives them no excuse. If you're a safe revive, then every medic is going to have a revive syringe on them. However, they did have a grenade launcher gadget, and I saw people talking about this on Twitter, and I used it and it had a load of drop on it and the damage wasn't very high and the splash damage was quite small. It was kind of not very effective for anti-infantry. I would say the use of it is more for like quickly destroying fortifications or blowing open doors or something. It didn't feel like it was going to cause a load of damage to players. But then you might argue, well, what's the point of it being in the game then? And for me personally, I'd rather that it was a smoke launcher than a grenade launcher because it did explode on impact. So I'm hoping that DICE keep that on the low. We don't want a situation like in BF1 where there's just explosive spam everywhere. It didn't feel like that in this build of the game, so that's good, but I really want it to stay that way. And if I recall correctly, the assault class could also pick that grenade launcher, but I'd much rather have the Panzerfaust than that. Another big change to the gameplay was that everyone now has the option to carry a bandage with them, no matter what class you are. So when you spawn in, you'll see a little icon next to you that says 0 and then a little bandage. So you don't get it by default. To actually get a bandage, you have to go to a medical station, which are dotted everywhere around the map. Use it just like you would the ammo station, and that will give you one bandage. And basically, if you get hit and there's no medics around, then you can hold 5 by default or whatever it is that you want to bind it to, and that will heal you over time. There's a little animation that plays and that will top your health back up. I don't mind this. I think it's more for the lone wolf solo players, but it definitely does devalue medics a little bit. Remember though that you don't spawn with this, you have to actively go and pick one up from a medic station, so not everyone is going to be equipped with a bandage all of the time because maybe they've just spawned in combat or they haven't remembered to go and pick one up. In terms of how the map played, it was kind of an A shape and the 5 flags are dotted around the top quadrant of the A. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a cool map. It reminds me of Sen Crossing from BF3. You're mainly going to be focused on infantry fighting in the streets and in the houses and in the alleyways. Very fun map. You've also got some verticality with the train and the bridge that runs all the way through the level, and there's a couple of rivers that separate things. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a cool map. There are tanks too, but not too many of them. Tanks in general I feel like have been buffed. They can take a little bit more damage now, and I felt like they had a few more shots in them. And while we're on that topic, there was no vehicle customization in this build of the game. Also no dragging. I did ask about that. That's not in the current build of the game, and I don't think it's going to be in the beta either. Of course, we all know by now that Conquest has gone back to the old ticket bleed system, which is great. I love that. It means that comebacks are possible and you get a lot more closer games. But one drawback of it is that a couple of the matches lasted like 45 minutes. And for me, I feel like that's dragging on a little bit too much. So I'm hoping that DICE can look at the ticket bleed rate and just speed it up a little bit. For me, I'd rather that games on average were lasting 25 to 30 minutes rather than 40 to 45 minutes. And you do start to get a bit fatigued playing the same map for that long. But you know, that's just my personal preference, but I feel like a lot of people might say the same thing when they play the beta. How about fortifications then? Well, there's loads on the map, absolutely tons of them everywhere, but I'm not using them. I did see some people build them. There were a couple of really cool ones where you could build a bridge, like you would have to build the framework and then each wooden part of it step by step and then the sides, and that gave your tanks and vehicles an extra access route across the river in a couple of places, and it had tank traps at the end too, so you could deny enemy vehicles from coming across if you wanted to. And there were even parts like alleyways where you could fortify the whole thing off with sandbags. So if you're using them, they can have big gameplay implications. At the tram station flag, where you've got a raised part and a lower part, if you capture that, you can effectively create a ring of fortifications around it that you can really use to hunker down and defend that flag from. But again, people just aren't using them and they're not doing it yet. So we'll see. It might be that when the game comes out and people play the map again and again and learn where the spots are, then yeah, they'll be useful and less gimmicky. And maybe DICE should put something in place that's not just an icon on the minimap, or not just when you have your hammer out they appear in white. I'm talking about something physical in the game that says, hey, you can build something here. For example, I'm not saying they should go this extreme, but you know, like in Mirror's Edge, when you see the red highlight on a structure, you know that you can climb up that structure. So maybe the visibility of fortifications needs a bit of work. I wasn't using them, I didn't care about them much at all, but on this map there were a load of them, and some of them were in very strategic key positions that would block off certain alleyways and entry points to flags. So I think that eventually people will learn about these and they will use them. That one I feel is up in the air at the moment, we'll see. There were quite a few stationary weapons on this map as well, but they're completely useless. If you go on a stationary weapon, you're going to get your head blown off in a second. So I really wish that DICE would add some kind of animation or system where you could duck down on a stationary weapon. So if you needed to reload or wait for the cooldown or something, it will just give you a little bit of cover for your head while you're attached to that stationary weapon. I'm not saying that you should be able to shoot and duck at the same time, because that's ridiculous and it would be overpowered. Same goes for on one of the tanks as well. There's now a third gunner seat on, I think it was one of the German tanks, where you're on the top on a massive machine gun, but again, you just get headshot as soon as you go on it. So if you had an option to duck down, maybe people would use them more. As for the RTX stuff, the Nvidia ray tracing technology, I did get to play a couple of rounds using that. It felt like it was a very early implementation of the technology. Sometimes on the level it looks absolutely incredible and the lighting is almost photorealistic in certain areas. You've got light beaming in through windows in the White House area on the marble floors. Outside where the sun bakes the side of a shop, it looks incredible. Also, you can see your reflection in glass and you can see your reflection in cars and puddles and other players' reflections, and it's in real time. Everything that you've equipped on your character, you can see in that reflection. There were a couple of times where I was looking at myself and I saw teammates running behind me and it startled me, and I thought, you know, that could have been an enemy. And another implementation of this, I suppose, is that if you were at the right angle looking at a glass window in a shop and there was an enemy on the corner that you couldn't see, technically you'd be able to see that player in the reflection of that window. And I think that's kind of cool and a lot more realistic, let's say. Yeah, that's an edge case, but there's a chance it could happen. But on the flip side, there are a lot of areas where it just didn't work very well, and I will show you these when I'm allowed to release footage. Some of the materials in the game that shouldn't have been shiny or ray tracy, like bricks for example, you know, there were a couple of alleyways where all the bricks on the sides of the buildings were shining and leaves on the plants and the vegetation were shiny and it kind of looked like snow or rain on them. It just kind of odd. And some houses you would go in and the wooden doors and walls and floors were shining and just way too reflective, just looked kind of weird. So it was very hit and miss. as I said, it did feel like a really early implementation of the tech, so I'm sure that they will figure out what materials should be reflective and which ones shouldn't. As for performance, I was playing the game at 1080p on ultra settings and it felt like around 70 to 80 frames per second whilst recording with shadow play. It did stutter a couple of times when hints came up, but apparently that was just a bug and that's easy to fix. But I feel like with BF5 RTX, the ray tracing tech, if you've got that kind of card, it's going to be for the people who want the absolute best graphics and don't really care about having the highest frame rate. And also for screenshotting stuff, there's been a lot of devs online hinting that there's some kind of screenshot feature coming to the game. So that's cool for those guys who like to take screenshots. And also if you were doing cinematics, that's when the game is going to look its best. I did try Tomb Raider as well. That was running really poorly at like 30 to 40 frames per second at 1080p, but they didn't tell me what card was in there. It did look good though, but way too much motion blur. The best looking game that I saw though was Metro. That looked incredible and it looked like it was running at a really high frame rate. So those devs have obviously spent a lot of time implementing the ray tracing stuff there. Overall, I enjoyed my time playing the game at Gamescom. The gunplay, the time to kill, the movement is all solid. There's a lot more emphasis on team play with the attrition system. I like the direction the gameplay is going. The customization of the weapons, the visuals, very good. I haven't tested the modifications yet because, as I said, they weren't in the build, so I can't really say anything about that. We didn't hear anything about Battle Royale, so no news for you there. In terms of glaring obvious bugs, there weren't that many, but I did experience one where I couldn't deploy until my whole squad had been killed, so that was quite bad. And also now they've enabled server-side ragdolls. There was some really weird stuff going on with dead bodies on the ground where they'd be like flipping out and doing all sorts of crazy stuff and hanging in the air like ragdolls. So they've got some nasty bugs there with the ragdolls that they're gonna have to fix before launch. And also, I don't have to say it again, but I think they're doing a pretty bad job at marketing this game. Mainly, I think it's the fact that they haven't shown that much gameplay. And we're all gamers, we just want to see the gameplay. We want to know the details in depth and we want to see the gameplay. So I think they've really dropped the ball on not revealing key gameplay details and showing long sections of gameplay at the reveal, at EA Play and during Gamescom. I've just received an email saying that the embargo for the footage is Monday, the 27th. So that's when I'll be able to show you all of this stuff. But I'd rather that I could have done it in this video rather than leaving you to wait another 3 days, but that's the way it goes. And that's all for today, guys. On Monday there'll be a ton of gameplay footage from the new Rotterdam map, so I can show you some of this stuff, and all of the other content creators that were there will also be posting their thoughts and impressions of the game. So on Monday there's going to be an absolute flood of gameplay content on YouTube, so look out for it if you're interested. And that's all for today, guys. Do let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you liked the video, give it a like. If you didn't like it, dislike it. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.